Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And for those of you who are listening to this on replay as well, this is going to be negotiating and structuring the deal. We're going to be talking about different things that you should know and can utilize to benefit you when it comes to negotiating and structuring the deal when you're getting ready to purchase a home. So I'm Frederick Middlebrooks. I am a loan originator, loan officer, as they are more commonly known as. I'm also a Navy veteran. I did 7 years in the Navy prior to getting out and going into loan origination. So I love being a loan officer, love serving people and helping people purchase their first homes. That is one of the big joys that I have of doing this job that I do and gaining the information that I'm able to have so that I can share it with you all. I want to introduce Cynthia Davis as well. Cynthia Davis has been in the real estate industry for over 25 years now. So she has a lot of experience. She is a real estate broker, business owner. She also is a real estate instructor for the National Association of Realtors and for the Georgia Association of Realtors. So Cynthia knows a lot when it comes to real estate, when it comes to negotiating. She's seen a lot of different markets, and she is gracious enough to bless us with her time so she can share some of that knowledge with her. So, all right, so without further ado, we'll get it kicked off. And Cynthia, I will turn it over to you to talk negotiation. You can just let me know when to click the slide over.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'm excited to be here with you all this evening and share just a few tips on things to think about when you are negotiating your deal of buying or helping someone else to buy a property. So let's get going, Frederick. First thing I say is have a plan. Have a plan. Before you go out there, know what your market looks like and know where you fit in that market. Just because the market is doing some things, you got to make sure you're in the right place within that market and that you understand the market for which you have been pre-qualified or pre-approved for. So that's what comes in when it says, how much can you afford to spend each month? Making sure that you understand that there are other pieces to the puzzle after you get pre-qualified and pre-approved. So make sure you know where you fit within the market, what is available, what the market looks like where you are going to be looking. And it makes a difference when you have that plan because you decide up front whether or not this is your first home, and we sometimes call it our starter home, or is this your move up home? This is your dream home, or is it a potential investment? Because those three purchases will cause you to need a different plan for how you go about locating and securing the property that you want. And absolutely, how long are you going to keep this home? A part of that plan needs to be, how long do you plan on being in that home? And that will help determine how you will negotiate, because you will negotiate so that it benefits you if you're going to plan to be in this home for many, many years. If you do not plan to be in there for a long period of time, then there are other strategies you should use in order to negotiate. For example, if you're going to be in that home a long time, you want to save as much of the interest as you can. And Frederick is going to talk about this later. So you might be, instead of just going for the bottom price, which is what a lot of people do, they go for, I want pay the lowest price I can pay for this property. And in doing so, you leave a lot on the table that could have saved you in overall. And as I said, Frederick's going to talk to you about that. So next slide, Frederick. We talked about knowing the current market. Buyers, real estate professionals typically do a comparative market analysis for a seller. However, it is as critically important. Buyers have the real estate professional you're working with do a comparative market analysis for you for the property that you are interested in, because you want to know what the property looks like within the market that it is in. So that's very, very important. And then when you're negotiating, consider the condition of the property. Like I said before, oftentimes people want to go in and want the bottom price. They want the bottom price. And in doing that, you want to consider the condition of the property. Is it in excellent condition? Is it in a condition where you're going to need to make some adjustments in it to make it livable or look like the way you want it to look like? And remember, even if it doesn't look the way you want it to look, but it is passing all its checkpoints, then that is on the buyer to make those changes and adjustment, not on the seller. One situation, and when we want to negotiate as well, is consider what the motivation is of the seller. Now, if the seller, there's a situation I'm involved in right now where the seller is highly motivated. So what we're doing is the seller is buying down the interest rate, something else Frederick will talk to you about, for the buyer. So if we're paying, we might go in at asking price, but they are using some of that closing cost money that we're able to receive. And the seller is buying down the interest rate for the buyer, which saves the buyer overall long term. So having that plan, knowing how long you're going to be in the property, is a strategy that you will need in order to determine how you're going to negotiate, not just the bottom price. So this person is going to be in this home long term. So we're looking for a buy down that is fixed for the length of the loan. And that is what we are negotiating for right now. If the buyer is not staying in the home a long period of time, then that might not be as important. But those are that is a strategy that you can use when doing so. And so once again, just to recap just a little, make sure you have a plan. Know where you fit in the market. Know what the market looks like where you fit. Just because sometimes we have ideas of what we want, make sure that's where your market will take you to that property. And also make sure you do a comparative market analysis. That can be part of the strategy, want to negotiate, because once you know that, you know where to come in, but how this property compares to other properties. That is an excellent negotiating tool right there. Condition of the property, and what is the motivation of the seller as well. So with those, I'm going to send it back to you, Frederick. You're on mute.
All right, so thank you for that. I'll jump into my part and we'll get going with the structuring of it. So this is one of the places where it's really important for you as a home buyer to have a real estate agent and a loan officer that, one, know their stuff, but two, have a good working relationship. And the reason being is because going to your loan officer and knowing what the price points are that you need to hit in order to get the buy down rate that you want, the price that you want, will help you, arm you when you go to negotiating, so you know kind of where you need to go in with these price points. So getting into the meat of things, this is a breakdown of a $300,000 home. And these are some of the scenarios that I'm gonna point out. So you've got a $15,000 price break. And this is just an example, or you can do a permanent rate buy down, seller paid closing costs, or you can do a temporary buy down. And I'm gonna show you a little bit how the structuring of things actually affects how much you end up paying over the first 5 years of that loan. So getting things kicked off, the lowest The option that will save you the least amount of money, we'll start there, is your seller paid closing costs. So over the first 5 years, if all the seller does is pay the closing costs for that loan, you will pay $145,000. And before I go further, I did just want to mention, if you do have any questions, please feel free to put those in the chat. And after we're done with the presentation, I will be more than happy, or Cynthia will be more than happy as well, to answer any questions that you have. So getting back into it, if the seller, all they do is pay closing costs, that is going to have the least effect on you saving money. And the reason is because closing costs do nothing to affect how much you pay per month or the interest rate that you're paying. So all they're paying are the closing costs. And for this $300,000 home, we're going to say closing costs are about 3% on average, which would bring them to $9,000, but you still pay $145,500 over the first 5 years of that mortgage. So the next best option after closing costs is to take a price break. So if you did a price break, and by price break, I mean you get $15,000 off the purchase price of that home. Over the first 5 years, if you take the price break option, you would pay $139,000. So you still have the same interest rate. However, you're paying interest on $15,000 less, which is why you end up spending about $6,300 less over the first 5 years of that mortgage, which could be a significant portion. That's over $1,000 a year that you're saving just by taking a $15,000 price break. But what if we went a step further? Instead of doing a price break, we went and did a temporary buy down. We would look at saving a little bit more than the price break. Not much, but a little bit. And so if you don't know what a buy down is, I am going to explain all of that in the next slide. But for right now, a buy down, I will say briefly, buys down your interest rate for the first 2 years of that mortgage. So what that means is that you would pay a lower reduced interest rate for the first year. You would pay still a lower rate for the second year, and then you would pay the regular note rate, as we call it, or your regular interest rate for the year 3 on throughout the remainder of that mortgage. But just having those 2 years at a reduced interest rate still saves you more money over the first 5 years of that loan than taking the price break. Now, as you get beyond that 5-year point, the price break does win out because, again, after year 2, you are paying the note rate for year 3 on throughout the remainder of the mortgage, but which is the same rate you have with the price break, but on the price break, you're paying it on $15,000 less. However, for the first 5 years of that mortgage, again, you can refinance anywhere in that time as well. You are saving yourself some money by taking the temporary buy down over the price break. Lastly, going to a permanent buy down, which means you are permanently buying down your interest rate. Let's say if you were given a 7% interest rate and you permanently buy that down a whole percentage point, this is what it cost you, but this is what it cost you over the 5 years. You're paying $134,247. You compare that to seller paid closing costs, that's over $2,000 a year, because that's over $11,000 right there that you are saving from the seller paid closing costs. It's about $5,000 that you're saving over the price break, and another $4,000 that you're saving from the temporary buy down. So the best option that you can have is to get your rate permanently bought down, and that's going to save you the most money in the long run. Now, this is where it gets interesting. How do we structure this thing in order to make it work to our benefit here? So let's say that you go to purchase a home and the seller says, okay, we'll drop $15,000 off the purchase price. So that $300,000 home just became $285,000. Instead of taking a $285,000 price break, what if you use $11,500 of that to permanently buy your interest rate down to 1%? So now you get the benefits of the permanent buy down, and you also can use the remainder, that other $3,500 left, and still put that towards the price break, or you can put that towards closing costs. But again, as we just showed, you'll save a little bit more money if you reduce the price of the home a little bit. But the best deal, obviously, you can get that permanent rate buy down. You get a little bit of the benefit of both worlds if you put some of that price break toward the permanent buy down. But another way that you can structure it, which might be even more interesting, is what if you added $700 of your own money toward this deal. Now you can take that $15,000 price break here, and you can have the seller pay all the closing costs and temporarily buy down your interest rate. So you can, again, if you want to leave that 9,000 over here, you can leave the 9,000 over here. You can do the price break and the temporary buy down, and then you don't add any of your money. But in any case, you can get two of these to work towards your benefits. So with that temporary buy down, let's explain how that works a little bit, because as you can see, out of these three options, it also provides you a little bit of I'll say fluidity, a little bit of options that you have in terms of which route you want to take, because you might have a seller that's like, I'm not dropping the price $15,000. I'm only dropping the price half of that. I'll go $7,500. Cool. You still have a temporary buy down option. Maybe that seller only wants to drop it wherever in between. You see the different options that you have available that could potentially save you even more money over the long haul. And keep in mind, when you're reducing your interest rates with the permanent buy down, the temporary buy down, and the price break, your monthly payments are also being reduced as well. So that's something to definitely keep in mind. Depending upon how much your seller is willing to negotiate, you have some options. But getting back to what I was saying with using two of these, let's say if your seller was willing to drop the price $15,000, you can have $6,700 of that go towards temporarily buying down your rate for those first 2 years. And this is what that would look like, and why this option becomes a little bit more interesting, even though it's not the option that would initially on the surface save you the most money over the permanent buy down. So this is how the buy down works. Your note rate, or your standard interest rate, what we call it the note rate in the mortgage industry, let's say is 7%. So with a 2-1 buy down, for the first year, you pay a 5%, i.e. 2 percentage points less than the note rate. For the second year, you pay a 6% interest rate, which is 1 percent point less than the note rate, hence the phrase 2-1 buy down. And for the third year on throughout the remainder of the mortgage, you pay your 7% interest rate. That's how the 2-1 buy down works. You might be wondering, how do I just get this lower rate? Well, you are able to get the lower rate because the interest that you would have paid in year 1 and in year 2, if you had paid the full 7% interest rate, all of that interest that you would have paid is paid for on your behalf in advance by the seller. So you're paying interest, you're paying the mortgage at a 5% interest rate, but that 2% that you would have paid interest on, that's paid in advance by the seller when they do this buy down. And that extra 1% that you would have paid during the second year of that mortgage, that's also paid in advance by the seller as part of this buy down. So this is kind of how this looks. You've got 2 years of interest that are paid in advance. That's your first year at 5% and your second year at 6%. After the first year, you still got an entire year of interest, that 1% difference here, that's already been paid in advance for you. Now, interest rate that you got in was at 7%, which are the current interest rates right now. We know interest rates are higher. They're at the high 6s, low 7s, depending upon where your credit score is. You might be able to get to the mid or the low 6s. But let's just stick with our 7 for our example here. You got in at a 7% interest rate, but for that first year, you paid 5%. Not bad. But for the second year, you're paying 6%. But let's say we get ready to start off this second year and interest rates drop to a 5% interest rate. Oh man, but you're paying 6%. This is what you can do. That interest has already been paid on your behalf. So you can take that money and use it to refinance. And you can use that money to pay to help cover the cost of you refinancing that home to buy your interest rate down to 5%. And so now your interest rate is at a 5% interest rate, not for 1 year, but for the rest of the mortgage. So you never paid that 6% interest rate. Your seller paid for a 2-1 buy down on your behalf. So they paid for you to have that 5% for the first year. Interest rates dropped. And let's say interest rates dropped and now they're 5%. And instead of you having a 6 and then going up to a 7 throughout the remainder of the mortgage, you use that second year that the seller has already paid for, use that to help cover the cost of refinancing your home into a 5% interest rate. And now you've got a 5% throughout the remainder of the mortgage. You got to get the house when you wanted to get it. You didn't have to delay and wait to purchase that home. And you got to pay a 5% interest rate throughout the entire time of owning that home. And that's something that is beautiful about how you structure deals. There are so many different ways, more than what I can go into in just one 45-minute Zoom call, but just wanted to show you a little bit about how you can structure the deal in order to make it work to your benefit. And this is just one of those ways that you can do it to where people are, oh, I'm sitting on the fence and waiting for interest rates to come back down before I purchase a home. Don't wait, because while you are waiting, home prices are still creeping up there. We're not going to see a 2008 drop off. And also, if you're renting instead of owning right now, then you're paying rent. But if you were paying a mortgage, then a portion of that rent goes into equity in a home that you own, thereby putting more value into that home that you have that you can pull from later on if you need to. But there's so many ways to structure the deal where you don't have to wait for interest rates to drop right now. There are ways where you can negotiate to have the seller pay for that on your behalf. But while we're speaking of waiting, I put this up in the webinar that we did last month in December, but I'll go over it briefly here. Let's say you have a home that you are purchasing at a $355,000 purchase price with a 7.5% interest rate. Not crazy for these times that we're in right now. So if you wait 6 months, that interest rate goes down 1%. Let's say it goes down to 6.5. That saves you $210 on your payment. So good on you. You wait a year, it goes down another percent. It saves you $381 on your monthly payment. You wait 2 years, $404. In 3 years, you save $314. And that's because as you wait, the cost of the home values going up and getting more expensive overcomes what you're actually saving by having that lower interest rate. But in either case, you're saving $300, $400 on your monthly payment by waiting. But what are you losing? You lost $2,900 in appreciation by waiting 6 months because, as we stated earlier, the values of homes are getting more expensive over time. And so they might not be the straight up, double-digit appreciation that we saw in 2020 and 2021. However, they are getting more expensive over time, plus amortization loss. Amortization loss is the money that you would have paid into your home to pay down the principal balance of it. So when you pay your mortgage, there's generally 4 parts to it. You've got principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. And by you paying down that principal portion, that's you putting value back into your home because you're paying down the balance of what you owe on it. So the total of that amortization, or the money you would have paid on your mortgage, plus the value that your home would have gained, $4,500 that you lost out on by waiting to get a $210 difference in your monthly payments. After year 1, we're at $14,000 because that home is now appreciated $11,000, and you would have paid $3,100. So even if that home never appreciated, the fact that you would have put $3,100 in equity in your home still outweighs that $381 in monthly payments that you would have saved, keeping in mind that at any point, if the interest rates dropped, you can refinance into a lower rate and still save that $381 and benefit from having the appreciation and the amortization from you paying off your mortgage. But you only get the benefit of both of those if you purchase early instead of waiting. But if you wait, this is what you're missing out on, is that $14,000 right there. And after year 2, $32,000, $51,000 after year 3. So as you can see, it hurts you to wait to purchase a home. And by going ahead and moving and acting and knowing the tools that you have available with the buy downs, and I'll go back to that screen really quick just for those who want to take a look at it. you can utilize a 2-1 buy down, which again is paid for by the seller, and that's something that you can negotiate also, having your loan officer and your real estate agent working together so that you know how much is that 2-1 buy down. Go to your loan officer, oh, that 2-1 buy down is going to cost $8,000 or it's going to cost however much. Okay, cool. Now you know a price that you can go into to start that negotiating and everything. So again, it's important for you to have that good working relationship with your loan officer and your real estate agent as well, so that you can utilize all of these tools to help you save money in the long run. And as you can see, if interest rates drop, which in the mortgage industry, a lot of mortgage professionals are expecting interest rates to start coming down. Hopefully, no one can predict the future, but a lot of people in the mortgage industry are predicting that interest rates will hopefully start easing a little bit come the springtime. So as we end out the first quarter, start beginning the second quarter of this year, hopefully we'll see some easing in the mortgage interest rates, maybe get down to the low sixes, maybe the high fives. Time will only tell, but again, this makes a 2-1 buy down option very appealing because you can immediately benefit from having a low rate, but you can also utilize the remaining balance of what you haven't used. So even if you're 6 months into this thing, but you still have interest left from the half of the first year and all of the second year, you can use that remaining balance that you have not used to cover the cost of refinancing your home. So not only did the seller pay for your lower interest rate for the first year and possibly the second, they also paid to help cover the cost of you refinancing to have a lower rate for the rest of the mortgage. So you never have to see that 7% interest rate. But even if you did get up to year 3 or year 4 with a set to and paid a 7% interest rate for year 3 and year 4, and then you refinance because it took 3 years or 4 years for rates to drop, I don't think that's what's going to happen. But if it does, you are still in a better situation because as we showed here on this slide, up through year 5, the buy down still is the better option over just taking a straight price break. So just wanted to present you with a lot of those options and let you know kind of what you have to look forward to when it comes time to negotiating and structuring the deal for this loan. So that's it. This is our contact information. Again, for Cynthia, if you wanted to reach out to her and if you wanted to contact me, I'm also on all the social media platforms. So feel free to link up with me on social media as well. Follow me on there. I put a lot of routine information out on a weekly basis with the GA loan officer on my Instagram and TikTok as well. So with that, I'll check the chat to see. I don't see any questions in the chat. So hopefully this has been good. Thank you, Latoria. I appreciate that. And glad that you're getting some good information out of it. And that's all I had to say. Cynthia, was there anything else that you need to add?
No, nothing else. I appreciate everyone being here, and I just, would join in and say with you that it is extremely important to have that working relationship between the lender and the real estate professional. It works. I do see that we have a couple of.
I see one question in there. Is there any wiggle room besides buy down sellers that sellers can cut down? I'm assuming I don't exactly understand the question, but I'm assuming you mean that is there anything else that sellers can do to help cut down the cost or any room for negotiation? Okay. So in this market that we're in right now, it is a market where a lot of buyers are shying away because of higher interest rates, but it's actually a market where you have a lot more negotiating room as a buyer because it's not the huge demand that we had in 2020 and 2021. So with that, yes, there is wiggle room that you have to be able to go to sellers and ask them to pay for, buy downs, ask them to permanently buy down, temporarily buy down, ask for seller concessions for them to pay for closing costs. And another thing that I didn't mention, something else that you can also ask for sellers to pay for, you might be a buyer or know someone who has some debt that is currently preventing them from being able to purchase a home. Depending on the loan program that you use, sellers can actually pay for debt on behalf of the buyer so that the buyer now qualifies to be able to purchase a home. So there are limitations with that. Depending upon the loan program, the seller might be able to contribute 3 or 4% to paying down debt on behalf of the seller, or excuse me, paying down debt on behalf of the buyer. But there are other things that the seller can do with paying off debt for the buyer so that the buyer can qualify for a loan, in addition to the options that we explained with the seller being able to pay for buy downs that the buyer gets to benefit from. And in the negotiation piece of it, if the seller does, how do I put this? If the seller does a price break, you don't have to go into your negotiation saying, hey, I want you to pay, because the seller might not know what you're talking about. If you're throwing around, I want the buy down, and I want this here, and da-da. If you just get the price break and then you structure it later after you're under contract, the bottom line is the same for the seller. So if you have a seller that's willing to drop $15,000 off the purchase price, and then after you're under contract, you make an amendment to the contract to say that the seller is going to put 7 of that 15,000 towards a 2-1 buy down, then the bottom line doesn't change for the seller. The seller is still putting $15,000 of that money somewhere. So their bottom line doesn't change, but it benefits you and a lot more. Does that answer your question, hopefully? Is there a reason why sellers don't lower their sales prices versus giving buyers concessions? To be honest, I'm not sure. The reason would differ from seller to seller. So I'm not certain why they don't lower their sales prices versus giving buyers concessions. I know you have some sellers that, again, in 2020 and 2021, it also depends on the market. They didn't need to lower their sales prices. Buyers were paying $15,000, $20,000, $30,000, $50,000 over asking price because the demand was that high. And we still have a market where we have low supply right now. But because interest rates are higher, even though we have low supply, you have a lot of buyers that have left. So I don't know the exact reason of why sellers aren't lowering sales prices, but I do know that one of the things that as a mortgage professional, we are trying to encourage sellers to do is to offer buy downs, because that will help the buyers on their monthly payment. The buyers still have to qualify at the note rate, but they get to benefit from paying lower monthly payments for those first 2 years of the mortgage.
What I will say, though, is I think it's presentation, how it is presented to the seller. And as you stated earlier, Frederick, they don't understand. So presentation matters, how it's presented to them.
Absolutely. And I don't see any other questions in the chat. I do thank you. Thank you all for attending, for listening. I hope this was helpful for you. Again, please do reach out to me. Follow me on social media. I put out a lot of great information on there as well. And yeah, if you're in the need for a home, or you know someone who is looking to buy, sell, or refinance, I would greatly be honored to help them throughout that journey, as I'm sure Cynthia would as well. So thank you again for attending. We greatly appreciate the time that you took out of your day to be with us this evening. And take care. Have a blessed week and a blessed weekend, as we are on Thursday now. So have a blessed weekend.